COVID are gone, then thank you. Goodbye.
Members of council, we'll call the meeting to order. We welcome any audience viewing us on live YouTube. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge that the ground on which we live is the traditional territory of Caldwell First Nation, of the Three Fires Confederacy, and the original people of Point Pelee and Pelee Island and its surrounding lands and waters, and that of the Huron-Wendat and Wyandot peoples. We recognize and respect the First Nations who are stewards of the land and waters of Turtle Island and who have embraced this stewardship since time immemorial. We would also like to acknowledge the contributions of other nearby First Nation communities and all original people across Turtle Island. If we could have a moment of silent reflection, and then we will play our national anthem. Thank you. Members of council, you've had a chance to look at items on the agenda. Is there any conflict of interest? None noted. Thank you. Adoption of the minutes, meeting held January 11th, 2022, be adopted as presented. Councillor Reno and then Deputy Mayor Malash. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Presentations. We have the pleasure of welcoming the General Manager, Joe Burrell from Essex Power Lines tonight, joining us obviously by Zoom. Joe, welcome. I should say Mr. Burrell. Oh, you know what? I forgot Mayor's comments. Joe, if you can just hang on 1 second, I'm sorry. Just a couple comments here. They're important. So I want to acknowledge the appointment of Jason Woods to the position of Deputy Chief of LaSalle Police Service. Deputy Chief Woods has assumed the role of acting Deputy Chief for the past 11 months. So it's great to keep the momentum going and continue on with the fulfillment of the vision and mission of the police service under Chief Davies. Congratulations, Deputy Chief Woods. Thank you for our staff of Public Works for their efforts with snow cleanup. As a reminder, when snow is predicted, please move your vehicles parked on the road to your driveway to ensure snow removal equipment can clear the whole road. Please also refrain from pushing snow back onto the road, as this can create a hazard for vehicles driving by. As we are still working under COVID-19, please remember to shop local when possible through curbside pickup and consider takeout from our local restaurants in order to support our community. We are all hoping we're on our way towards a better 2022. With that being said, please consider booking an appointment for the COVID-19 vaccine or booster if you have not already done so. Stay safe and healthy, and hopefully we can all get back to some normalcy soon. Sorry, Mr. Burrell.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the opportunity. First of all, to correct my logo, which I understand was backwards, so I kind of fixed that up before I started. Thank you. And I'm not sure in terms of procedural, should I share my PowerPoint presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Just confirming that my visual is visible to all. Good. And my audio is acceptable, Your Worship?
Yes, it
Okay.
is.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. My name is Joe Burrell. I'm the General Manager of Essex Power Lines. Before I begin, I just want to acknowledge some individuals in the virtual audience this evening. I believe John Darsky is in the virtual audience. John is if he's not here, he'll be joining us shortly. John is the lay representative from the town of LaSalle. Many of you know John. John has deep roots in the town of LaSalle and in the hydro business, starting with his career at LaSalle PUC, and then actually moving over to Essex Power Lines when we were formed, and then ultimately just recently retiring from Enwin. So I just wanted to acknowledge John as the lay representative from the town of LaSalle, and also Mayor Bondi as the elected town representative on the Essex Power Board. Thank you for your oversight, your input, and your due diligence on behalf of the shareholder. Having said that, I'll start my presentation and touch upon some of the points in the PowerPoint presentation. I'll start by touching on who we are. And many of you know who we are, but I just wanted to go over who we are because we're more than just a utility or a power company. We obviously have 4 municipal shareholders, of which one is the town of LaSalle, all with different equity shares in Essex Power, but each with equal voting rights. Obviously, each has an elected member on the board of directors and also gets to appoint a lay representative on the board of directors, and all bound by a unanimous shareholder agreement. EPL is the regulated hydroelectric distribution company that you see here on your screen. We have approximately 44 bargaining unit and non-bargaining unit employees that reside in Essex Power Lines, which is again regulated by the Ontario Energy Board. You see a box there, Essex Power Services, that's our services company. No employees reside in Essex Power Services. They actually use the employees from Essex Power Lines to do work. And then you see on the screen our unregulated business, or businesses. Essex Energy, our energy management services company, Utilismart Corporation, our meter data management company, and Wadsworth, our energy analysis service company, which I'll highlight in some of my slides here tonight in terms of what type of work they're doing and what they've accomplished. Again, that's our unregulated side of the business. So what about Essex Power Lines? What are our customers' perception of us? As a regulated body under the Ontario Energy Board, we have to hire an independent third party every 2 years to undertake a customer satisfaction survey. We actually have to file it with our regulator. I'm pleased to report that in each category measured in 2020, we improved when comparing our 2018 to our 2020 results, including our overall satisfaction score improving from 83% in 2018 to 86% in 2020. Not surprisingly, the level of satisfaction related to price ranks consistently low. Not only in 2018 and 2020, if I go back to the 2016 and 14 surveys, price would be at the bottom of the level of satisfaction from our customers. Having said that, what about price and customer rates? I think it's important in our initial discussion with respect to customer hydro rates. We must always start with how much of the bill is Essex Power responsible for, and how much of the bill the provincial government, or how much do they control? And that split, as you can see, is roughly 20% on behalf of Essex Power Lines, 80% is controlled by the province. So the next logical discussion would be, what is or has Essex Power Lines done relative to its 20%? And you see from this slide our historical and cumulative, speaking historically and cumulatively, Essex Power has remained below the rate of inflation with respect to our 20% portion of the bill. So, when we talk about, specifically Essex Power Lines and their 20%, this is an excellent illustration of how we've been directed by our board and how we've maintained rates at below the rate of inflation from 2012 to 2021. Moving on to performance. So how is Essex Power Lines specifically performing in relation to the town of LaSalle? Both in terms of number of customers that are affected by outages and customer hours. So I'll break that down for you and I'll try to explain it to you as best I can. So in terms of number of customers, so this might be 100 customers on one day. If the whole town goes out, it might be a few thousand customers. Cumulatively speaking, the number of customers that have been affected by Essex Power Lines outages and what are the cause of those outages. So you can see from our data in 2021 in a pie chart that roughly almost 60% of our town of LaSalle outages, 58.7, are caused by a loss of supply. What does that mean? It means that the feed that is coming into the town of LaSalle that we in turn distribute to our customers is somehow affected or cut off, and it affects those customers. So a large portion of that pie is a loss of supply. The second reason, the second highest reason you can look to in terms of customers affected is adverse weather. Even if we look at customer hours, so customer hours, if 10 customers are out 2 hours, that's 20 total customer hours. In terms of customer hours in the town of LaSalle, again, the largest piece of the pie in terms of the data is the loss of supply, the feed coming into the town, and the second highest again is adverse weather. And you see the other reasons as well. But I want to highlight one particular reason historically for outages that we've worked on, and that our data is telling us it's definitely trending in the right direction, and that's defective equipment failures. The data trend, as I mentioned, the line is certainly indicating that we're going in the right direction, downwards in terms of the number of instances of defective equipment failures resulting in outages. And that's quite frankly a credit to the plan that has been put in place over a number of years to replace older equipment, maintain our equipment, and that's not something that's happened overnight. And now we're starting to see the fruits of that labor in terms of a significant decrease in our equipment failures. So what can we do in terms of a loss of supply? Since it accounts for such a large piece of the pie in terms of both the number of customers that are affected and the customer hours. So, I mean, part of what we can do is try to bring it within our control as much as possible. Part of the solution is working with the person who supplies that power, and namely Hydro One, in terms of what are they doing? What are they doing in terms of their preventative maintenance, their pole replacement program, their tree trimming program, and actually giving them our data on how their loss of supply is affecting our customers in the town of LaSalle. The second thing we can do is mitigate. And by that I mean installing line monitors, reclosures, real-time automation controllers to reduce the impacts of the loss of supply. These devices will allow Essex Power Lines, our smart grid, to automatically resolve the outages and isolate and minimize the impacts. Will they prevent the outages? No. But what usually would occur is, let's say 1,000 customers would be out for 2 hours. By instituting the self-healing grid, we can reduce that or mitigate that and have 100 customers out 1 hour instead of 1,000 customers out 2 hours, because we've brought things within our control by devices that we've put within our grid to essentially self-heal remotely. So we don't have to call somebody out of bed at 2 o'clock in the morning to pick up a truck, to go figure out what the problem is, to repair the problem, and it takes 4 hours. We can reroute the power automatically, remotely, in order to mitigate the extent of that outage. Moving on to some exciting news that you might have heard about in the news recently. Essex Power Lines, together with Essex Energy Corporation, who is administering this program on our behalf, was selected by Natural Resources Canada, NRCan, to receive and administer $2 million in the Windsor-Essex region for the installation of EV charging stations. Under this program, more information you can find out about this program on our website, but in essence, the program will fund up to 50% of the capital cost of the installation of EV infrastructure in Windsor-Essex for everything but residential. This certainly helps check a number of boxes in terms of increasing our EV station infrastructure, in terms of leading in terms of environmental sustainability by making these EV charging stations more accessible, and quite frankly, being an industry leader. For a federal agency to select little old Essex Power that services 30,000 customers in southwestern Ontario to be the leader in implementing and administering these funds in the Windsor-Essex region is certainly an acknowledgement by the government that we can do it and we will do it. What else are we doing? We're continuing our push for paperless billing. When I last appeared before LaSalle Council, I think we had about less than 20% of our customers on paperless billing. We've implemented a strategy to specifically target an increase in the number of customers that we have on paperless billing. We currently have about a third of our customers on paperless billing, and we continue with regards to our strategy to increase the amount of customers that are receiving paperless bills. And it's not just about saving on the stamp and the envelope and the paper bill and the carbon footprint from the delivery of those bills. It's really about becoming a digital utility and bringing Essex Power into becoming a digital utility by having as many customers as possible receiving a paperless bill. What about Essex Energy Corporation? Essex Energy Corporation has been and continues to be an industry leader in renewables. And some of the examples you see on the screen here, and I think you'll probably recognize the one in the bottom left-hand corner, which is the rooftop solar at Volmer. It continues to pursue and engage market opportunities even after the Green Energy Act was canceled by the current provincial government. How are they doing that? They're concentrating on things like net metering, being involved in creating net zero communities, net zero emission communities by having solar offset carbon emissions. So exciting past from Essex Energy and an exciting future ahead for Essex Energy. And just to give you an example, some of these projects are local, but some of these projects are all over the province of Ontario. So it's not just the Windsor-Essex region that's benefiting from the efforts of Essex Energy. It's really across the province. Utilismart Corporation. Another one of our unregulated affiliates, our data meter management company. And whenever you're dealing with that data from meters, which now come from smart meters, it's really talking about a borderless business. Data flows from these meters. It doesn't matter where you are. So in addition to providing a substantial number of utility customers a service in Ontario, you can see from this map where Utilismart is expanding to. I know they're in Alberta and Lethbridge. They're in Nova Scotia and in Newfoundland, but most of the dots that you're seeing where they're expanding is south of the border, and that's in the U.S. So big plans for Utilismart in terms of their expansion into the U.S. market. So that's just a highlight of that business, which falls under the Essex Power umbrella. How are we performing financially? Very well. When in comparison, even after the down week, I guess you can say, the S&P had in the U.S. Recently, the S&P, separate and apart from this past week, has never performed as strong historically as it has. And yet, when we compare the 5-year and 10-year return on equity that our shareholders are getting from Essex Power Corporation, that's the regulated business that gets a regulated rate of return because we're regulated by the OEB, and our unregulated businesses, you can see what kind of financial performance we are delivering. Having said that, and having greater aspirations, both in terms of the utility and the regulated business and the unregulated business, I always emphasize that we don't forget where we came from. And where we came from was from LaSalle PUC and all the other PUCs. So we don't forget to contribute back to our communities that we're still part of. And we do that through, in one way we do that is through our Youth and Community Fund. That's $40,000 that we contribute back, $10,000 to each community every year. We're up to about $360,000 since we started. And I just listed some of the examples, some LaSalle-specific youth events that our $10,000 went to in the past year, and how many participants participated in those events. In addition to contributing to our local food banks, tying our paperless billing campaign to local community initiatives like the Hotel Dieu Grace Hospital Healthcare Foundation and mental health. We tied it with every person that signs up for paperless billing. We contributed $10 to that foundation. At the end of the day, it was $4,000 that we contributed. And obviously things like adopting families over the holidays, which we do on a year-to-year basis. Subject to any questions, Your Worship and members of council, that's my summary of the yearly review of Essex Power.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate the presentation. I'll open it up. If you could stop sharing your screen, Mr. Burrell, that'd be, please. Makes it easier for me to see all the council members. There we go. Okay, council questions. We'll start with Mr. Reno, then Ms. Desjardins.
Thank you, Your Worship. Hi, Joe. I don't mean to put you on the spot. I think your presentation was very good. I think many people can appreciate all the great things that are happening within your corporation, the giving, the use of funds from paperless billing and diverting them to charities is second to none. I think you guys are doing a great job. And I also appreciate the explanation in the pie chart about where the loss of power goes or where it comes from. If you could just very quickly, for the thousands of people that are watching us tonight on YouTube, explain what a power blip is. I know when I was a kid, power would go out for the whole day. And you'd be worried about if your freezer was going down and you're buying meat and all this stuff. And it doesn't seem to be that way, yet people are very passionate about when they come home and they have to reset their microwave. If you could just give us a quick explanation of what's really happening and how you guys mitigate those types of situations.
Absolutely. And you're not putting me on spot, because an explanation needs to be given to this audience or to be given through you to your constituents. So, ARs, we call them ARs, automatic reclosures. And the question we often get is, what are you doing about them? It's the question we sometimes get is, it's a blue sky day, and it's not a storm, and my power blips. I guess I would start by saying the first thing to remember is a blip is actually a protection mechanism. So an AR, as I call it, is a protection mechanism to prevent a larger outage. So if we look at it from that context to start, it is a protection mechanism, albeit an annoying one. But when you look at it from the alternative to a larger power outage, it's rather, in terms of degree, it's a lesser degree of a nuisance than a larger power outage. We really assess blips on a case-by-case basis. And what do I mean that? Why do we assess it on a case-by-case basis? And then at the end, I think I'll give you a few examples of AR investigations or power blip investigations and the reasons behind them. So the spectrum for a blip can be anything from weather, which is the obvious reason, and we can directly correlate weather. When somebody says, I had a blip last night, we can say, yeah, there was a lot of lightning last night. That's why you had a blip, because one of those lightnings hit our line, temporarily cut off power. The AR happened, the auto reclosure happened in order to prevent a larger outage. So you experienced a blip. But that's the easy one, right? And when somebody says, I had a blip on September 10th, we can do our investigation and look at what the weather was on September the 10th and easily explain or correlate that to the weather. The difficult ones are, hey, what was going on that day? Like, it was a perfect day. It was August 12th, August 13th, and all of a sudden my power blipped. So power blips for a number of reasons. And again, this is on the spectrum of why things happen. So contact with the line, I'll say. Contact with the overhead or the underground, whether that's a tree or a tree branch. The wind is blowing in a certain direction at a certain strength that causes that branch to hit the tree. And the tree branch is not lying on the tree, but it's whenever the wind blows at a certain direction and a certain strength, it hits, and then it goes back to where it was, and then it hits again, and that causes the blip. Animal contacts, those are not persistent. Animal contacts happen, yes, but those aren't the persistent blips. That happens once in a while, whether it's a bird or whatever it is. But there's also the element of contact of human, and I'll give you an example at the end of our biggest blip event in the town of LaSalle. Well, so when it's repeatable, and we use the process of elimination in terms of isolating the location. Now, having said that, if the contact is with the overhead or underground is outside our service territory, it's happening in Hydro One territory, but affecting LaSalle customers, we have to do our due diligence to say it's not us, it's Hydro One, and then go to Hydro One and say, what's going on? Have you been doing your due diligence in terms of your tree trimming or whatever that is causing these blips to occur that are affecting our customers in LaSalle? The last thing on the spectrum is sometimes it's an internal problem. And again, I'll give you the example of the internal problem in just a second. But so when a blip happens, we begin the process of elimination. Whether it's sending somebody out to patrol the lines, we do infrastructure inspection to identify hotspots. We analyze the data that we're getting in terms of narrowing where these blips are happening. So I'll give you some real life examples of ARs in our investigations and the outcome of our investigations. There was a large commercial customers that actually contacted the mayor. So the mayor contacted us, and we conducted the investigation. This large commercial customer had machines that were sensitive to even 1 millisecond blips. So they were very, very sensitive. Every time a millisecond blip happened, their machines would have to be reset. Obviously, they would lose production. They'd have to call the tech in, reset the machines, and it was happening a lot. So the mayor got involved, and we investigated. at the end of the day, just as an example, that investigation resulted in an internal problem within that customer that was actually causing the blips. That's just one example. I'll give you another example. So we have a line that runs from the Keith station. The Keith station is right next to the new Gordie Howe Bridge, and it runs a line all the way to Amherstburg, a feeder all the way to Amherstburg. So you can imagine how long that line is. So we had a tree branch. So we had some customers calling in about blips along Front Road, and in those subdivisions along Front Road. I believe it was Victory. And so we isolated where the blips were happening. We determined through our investigation, analysis of the data, patrolling infrared, it was a tree branch at a marina that was blowing, that was hitting that line that ran from the Gordie Howe Bridge to Amherstburg that was causing the blips in that subdivision. So again, process of elimination, but you can understand the scope of what we had to investigate in terms of the distance of the line. The last one I'll mention only because it was the largest reason for blips, largest number of calls that we got for blips in the town of LaSalle. And that occurred on August 12th and 13th. And I'll guarantee you that was a perfect day in the summertime where people probably experienced between 10 to 30 blips. And that occurred because of a human error. It was a dig in behind the Zares at the Creekside development. The contractor thought they were digging in an area where there was no underground, and the locates were not correct, and they hit the line. And in hitting the line and fixing the line and repairing the line and going through that whole process, customers were upset because of what that happened. Now, if you lived on Sprucewood and we're out in your backyard and somebody yelled inside that these blips were happening, you were thinking, what is going on? But that was our highest hitter in the town of LaSalle last year, was because of that specific instance. So in short, Councillor Reno, we rely on our technology to tell us where potential issues are happening. We rely on our customers. We want our customers to tell us, hey, I'm experiencing this. And through you as municipal representatives, I would encourage you to contact even myself directly. I know, the mayor has in the past, some of you councillors have in the past, in terms of specific issues. We want those issues, blips or otherwise, brought to our attention, and we'll dedicate every resource necessary in order to resolve that issue.
Thank you, Joe. That's a great explanation. And I just know that, come summertime, there's always a lot of questions. But I have to say one last thing in parting is that your communication team is very good. Although we don't necessarily get an explanation like that every day, the more people that I can send to a Facebook or a Twitter feed or your website in particular, you've always got the reason for the outage. It's always there before people, they're asking before they seek out the knowledge. So, hats off to your team, because you do a great job of putting the information out there. And thank you for your explanation today, because it's something we can kind of archive now that we're all on YouTube, and people can look at and refer back to, and hopefully get a little better understanding of what an inconvenience is versus a major outage. Thank you.
Thank you on that one, Joe. Councillor Desjardins.
Thank you. Through you to Joe. I'm going to change hats just for half a second. I want to say on behalf of the food bank, thank you so much for how much you help us every year. People don't realize that we do have a need in LaSalle, and working with Essex Power, we can always step up and help a few more families. So that's very appreciated. So I'll put my council hat back on. I appreciate what you said about, I like the numbers that you gave us. You said that I believe 58.7% of the loss of supply that comes into LaSalle is from outside, and usually Ontario Hydro. Are they doing anything, Joe, to kind of see what the issues are on their side, that maybe we can get that number down a little bit?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, I can indicate based on my experience, they have gotten better in terms of collaborating when we provide them the data to indicate the extent of the issue. I think the first thing is, we have the tools, and we're lucky enough to have developed the tools to indicate the scope of the issues. And that's the starting point. Because sometimes any utility, when they hear of issues, what is the scope of that issue? And I think what we're good at is giving them the data to say, this is what's happening to our customers in the town of LaSalle. They're calling us because obviously their bill says Essex Power Lines. But as you mentioned, 58.7% of the times the customers are affected by loss of supply. They have gotten better. They have an area representative. And based on the data, we try to work together to say, okay, what are the root causes? Is it tree trimming? What are you doing with regards to tree trimming? We do primary lines in the town of LaSalle every 2 years. We do secondary lines every 3 years. What do you do? So we try to do the due diligence on behalf of the LaSalle customers in meeting with and speaking to Hydro One representatives. What they do from there, I guess if the numbers are trending in different directions, I guess something is happening. But if the numbers are trending in the wrong direction, then again, it tells me that I need to go back and reiterate, the importance of their looking at the seriousness of the issue.
Yeah. Okay, that works. Thank you. And then just one other quick question. You indicated that the big problem that we had back in August was due to an incorrect or an outdated cable locate. Are we in pretty good shape in town with all the construction that's going on, all the building? Are our locates in good shape?
Yeah, so that issue on August 12th and 13th was the building of the Creekside condominium. There is a process where before they dig, they have to know where everything is located. The people who did the locates, didn't locate in a certain section, so the person started digging because they thought nothing was there, and something was there. But in terms of infrastructure, in terms of sustainability, in growth that LaSalle is experiencing, we're well prepared for that in terms of the expansion that is occurring, both in terms of single-family dwellings and multi-unit dwellings, condominiums. We're well prepared in terms of extending our infrastructure to those new builds and sustaining them. So well into the future, we're very well prepared in the town of LaSalle.
Okay, that's great. Thanks for your help and your information, Joe. Great presentation.
Right. Anytime.
No other council questions? Mr. Militia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a little further to Councillor Desjardins' questions. Our Public Works team works pretty closely with the infrastructure team at Essex Power to understand where our growth patterns are, and so that they are developing their patterns alongside along our development patterns as well. So there's a very close relationship that goes beyond the. I think some of it is rooted back down in the LaSalle Hydro days. But we do have a very good working relationship with the infrastructure folks. I know there's been folks that have changed, retired in our organization, the same as Essex Power, but certainly that relationship has been strong throughout the years. And I would also just echo some of the thanks from the town of LaSalle. We do lean on Essex Power to provide services over and above when it comes to some of the events that we hold. And I know that our Culture and Rec team certainly coordinates with the public relations team down at Essex Power to fund some of those events. So it's been a great relationship from that perspective. Certainly, again, we're in close contact. Joe and I go way back, I would say, but we're in very close contact in terms of some of the issues that we have in LaSalle. And one last thing I'll say is that we do have the advantage in LaSalle that almost all of our ratepayers in LaSalle are serviced by Essex Power exclusively. Where I know some of the other partner municipalities, they have a mix of Hydro One and other private entities, as well as Essex Power. So it gets dicey and difficult as to where problems are, trying to assess those, where the boundaries are pretty firm in LaSalle in terms of understanding where Essex Power boundaries are. Unfortunately, we are affected by the things that happen outside of the Essex Power boundaries within LaSalle, but they've done a really good job, but particularly in the most recent years, of really doing a lot of cleanup. And I would say that we used to get a lot more animal interference. We don't get as much anymore because I think they've done a very concerted effort to do more tree trimming around lines, which have kept the squirrels and birds away, quite frankly. So I think that's helped the situation in terms of what we can control.
Thanks, Joe. Militia, not Mr. Burrell, not yet. I just want to throw a few kudos Joe's way. He's a very modest person. And not only Joe, but John and Steve and everyone involved at Essex Power, a very modest group of gentlemen and women. They receive awards just in recognition. You don't know how big of this is for Essex Power to have the $1 million to do Windsor, Essex. Not Enwin, nothing against Enwin, but it's Essex Power. They received multiple awards. Was it 2 years ago, Joe? You were Utility of the Year, and that's happened more than once. So we are shareholders, majority shareholder of Essex Power, and they do a great job. What Joe gave you was a little summation of some of the things we discuss. And to Mr. Militia's point, when we have a meeting and I get in my binder and it says future projects, many of them are in LaSalle, the growth in LaSalle, and they're there. They're ready to go. Our planning department deals with Essex Power and they work hand in hand to do the planning. So we thank Essex Power to continue on the road you are, and hopefully the blips get minimized. Your next survey. Any closing comments, Joe?
And I thank you. And again, I mentioned, in terms of contacting myself, being part of a community-owned utility, who leads your company, whether it's John, Steve, or myself. We're just a phone call away, and that's what it means to be a community-owned hydro company. We're not faceless. You know where you can find us. So I encourage you all, if any issue, good or bad, comes up, please reach out to us.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Okay, council's pleasure. Motion received. Councilor Desjardins, Deputy Mayor Meloche, all in favor? That carries. Thank you. Next, we have Suzanne Charbonneau-Dent, Associate at Dillon Consulting Limited, to bring the report forward. There you are. Hi, Suzanne. Welcome.
Hello. Can everyone hear me okay?
Sorry, Joe, did you want to say something?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I could just add a couple of introductory comments, and I think
Sure.
you have some as well, but I just want to thank Dillon Consulting for the report that's before council, as well as Chief Thiessen's accompanying report. Again, this is coming out of the Fire Master Plan in terms of location selection, but what we have found is, as we've started to dig a little deeper into the Fire Master Plan, we've started to take a look at what our staffing complement was scheduled to look like as part of the Fire Master Plan, and realize that we do have a concern with respect to how the future was supposed to unfold. We've had some changes and we're making some adjustments accordingly. So part of that is rebalance. I call it a rebalancing of efforts, perhaps more weighted towards full-time staff and a little less weighted towards volunteer staff than what the Fire Master Plan of 2018/19 contemplated. We are finding, again, the quality of our volunteer force is second to none. The training they go through, the dedication that they have, again, we have nothing to complain about or be concerned about in those areas. What we are finding, though, is that it is harder and harder to recruit and retain volunteer firefighters just by the very nature of the work that they do and the opportunities that are out there and the commitment that's required. So we are finding that a bit more challenging than we have in the past, and we were at the cusp of that, and we thought that we were kind of beyond that, but we are back when the fire master plan was approved, and so we, as part of the analysis in terms of the station location, we started to take a look at that as well as the staffing complement, and the result of that is what you see before you is a bit of a change in direction in terms of where stations would be located. We are at this point in terms of the process asking for council to receive a few of these reports and start us down the path of some public engagement, as well as a financial plan to be conducted and undertaken. But certainly, again, I know Ms. Charbonneau is going to speak to the report in terms of station locations and some of the benefits of this change. And then I know Chief Thiessen will have some further comments as well. So again, we look forward to bringing this forward back to the public and engaging the public again with station locations. Certainly, we believe that the model that is being put forward is the best possible model that we have at this time and provides the best possible coverage in the long term. And so that's some of the things that, again, I just want to outline at the onset here. I'm not sure, Chief Thiessen, if you have any other comments before we turn it over to Ms. Charbonneau.
Sure, yes, thank you. Just in the way of introduction, Ms. Suzanne Charbonneau-Dent is here from Dillon Consultant. And just as a reminder, she did have the lead role in our current Fire Master Services Plan, and obviously here to present today. So Suzanne, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chief. Just get ready here with the screen, make sure everyone can see. We'll do. Let's see. Does that show up properly for everyone?
Yes, that's good.
Okay. Excellent. So good evening, and I am very pleased to be back with you tonight to discuss our most recent Fire and Emergency Services Planning Report for the town on the 3-station fire service model analysis. Can everyone hear me okay? The audio is okay.
Suzanne, Suzanne, sorry, your display shows the screen as well as the next slide and the comment points. I'm not sure if that's what you want to display or not, but if it is, that's great. If it's not, then you may want to make an adjustment.
Okay, that sounds good. Let's see. This one should be better. That look more clean, like a full slide there?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Excellent. No, thank you. All right. So the objectives of the study were firstly to consider a 3-station fire service delivery model, which maintains your existing Station 1 in a present location and adds 2 new fire stations. Through the analysis, we were looking to assess the emergency response capabilities of the initial arriving apparatus from each of the proposed station locations. And really, the proposed locations were being aimed to align with the future needs of the town for the growth and development within that urban area. So a bit stronger focus on the urban area than the town as a whole. The study analyzed 3 scenarios. The first was based on town selected locations that gave us a starting point. The second scenario used a tool within our GIS-based model that assists us in locating a facility that kind of optimizes locations. And the results that provided gave us the opportunity to go back and look again for town selected locations to use as our third kind of retooled, refined scenario. As well as the modeling analysis, we also did have some consideration and comments regarding the staffing associated with the composite model under a 3-station future model. I am just noticing, it looks to me as if this is not, I don't know that the slides are aligning with everything. I'm hoping, is it still the title slide for everyone?
You're still in the first slide. Yes.
Yeah, okay. I'm having I'm going to try. Does that look better? Oh.
Just give it a minute. Nothing yet. Okay, something's coming up. There you go.
Perfect. Okay. Sorry for the technical difficulties here.
No problem.
So to give some background on the 3-station study, as discussed, we completed the Fire Protection Services Master Plan, and that was adopted by Council in August of 2019. And since that time, town staff has been working to implement the recommendations, which included the proposed fire station location model. And that was a 2-station model. The first station to be constructed was located in the area of Matchett Road and Laurier Drive. And then in the future, the 2-station model would see the relocation of Fire Station 1 to Disputed Road in some of the newly proposed development areas. So the town investigated purchasing property in the area of Matchett Road and Laurier Drive to accomplish this, and met some challenges. And that brought us to the consideration of alternatives, at which kind of raised this idea of a 3-station model and investigating further some of those options. The master plan itself focused on a 10-year planning horizon, and it did include considerations up to the 20-year, but as aligned with the implementation, the 10-year was really the framework. Now, based on the most recent planning and development information, we were able to see that there is quite a bit of growth and intensification planned around that town center district, which is located in the response area of your existing Station 1. And so that's kind of raised a point that indicates there are benefits to maintaining your existing station in its current location to address to that some of that intensification and growth. The 3-station analysis does consider as well some of the farther term, longer term future build out of the town's urban area. And the use of this long-term target of build out better aligns with the life cycle and asset planning of fire station facilities. So the goal of a 3-station model is to get the town to the point where you have planned fire station locations that ultimately align with what your future build out growth and development picture looks like. So the study incorporated the most recently available planning information, and this included the projections that were within the 2020 development charge study. So that had a 20-year or 2039 projection of a population increase of 13,100 people. And that would equate to about 5,700 new residential units. And then the development charge forecast also included a build out, which was stated to be approximately 2040. And that would see an increase of 27,000 people, equivalent to 11,800 new residential units. And really, this residential growth is largely expected to occur either in your existing greenfield areas or as infill or intensification in your defined urban area. So what we did within this study was we used the base of planned growth and development that was collected and presented within the Fire Master Plan, and then overlaid the greenfield land parcels and considered those as potentials for future development to that build out horizon. There's certainly a little bit of overlap in those two data sets between the kind of 10 to 20 year growth that we had captured for the master plan and then the greenfield that could potentially be beyond that. But when we combine the two, we feel that that represents the best available information for the potential that lies there for full build-out development in the long term. The three-station study analysis, as mentioned, was really considered to be an addition of station location analysis up and beyond the work completed for the Fire Protection Services Master Plan. The scope of the three-station analysis really focused on that initial arriving apparatus and didn't include some of the analysis around initial response staffing levels, depth of response, or the actual response of the volunteer firefighter within the GIS-based model. What we did do was use our previous master plan model as the base and then updated that, as we've discussed, with the growth and development, as well as known future roads. And we were able to capture some more historic call data that's occurred since the master plan date. So that was an additional data set from 2019 to October 2021. And we were able to map these extra calls, 2,527 calls in addition. So that actually brought our data set to 2014 to 2021. So a very good representation of historic calls that the fire service has been responding to. I will note that the new calls added, the majority of them do occur in the urban area. So 86% approximately of the new historic call data set falls into that urban area boundary. The study assessed station locations based on the initial response performance measure, and that's standard for looking at station locations where you have at least an element of full-time response within the province and certainly across North America. So this is based on National Fire Protection Association, or NFPA 1710. And the initial response performance measure that was identified in the Fire Protection Services Master Plan as being the best fit for the capabilities of LaSalle Fire Service as well. So just as a refresher, this benchmark targets achieving 4 firefighters arriving on scene within a 4-minute travel time to 90% of the fire suppression related incidents within the defined urban area of the town. Now, the modeling does focus on the travel time component as opposed to the staffing, but we will discuss the staffing kind of following the model discussions. For comparison purposes, the 2018 conditions from the master plan, as well as that recommended 2-station model from the master plan, provided our baseline to which we were comparing the 3-station analysis to. So just to kind of set the stage, where we were at in 2018 conditions, in an initial response, 4 minutes of travel time, we were able to cover 33% of historic calls, 28% of the area of your urban geography, and 14% of the area of the entire town. The recommended 2-station model saw a great improvement from there. So we went up to 73% of historic calls covered, 74% of the urban geography being covered. The analysis within the current study looked at 3 scenarios. I briefly introduced these, but we'll give you a few more details. Scenario 1, the 3 stations were located at the existing 1900 Normandy Street, the old arena property at 2170 Front, and the Vollmer Complex property approximately at 2121 Laurier Parkway. The second scenario was we had the fixed location of your existing station, and the GIS-based model then selected the 2 other locations to optimize coverage. And this resulted in proposed locations on Front Road, near Front Row Park, and at Laurier Parkway, just west of Disputed Road. From that, we were able to kind of go back to the drawing board and select sites to assess for scenario 3. And this aimed to find sites that as closely aligned as possible to the scenario 2 results, but had the potential of being available. And so this resulted in, again, maintaining that existing station 1, having the old arena property 2170 Front Road and a proposed location just west on Disputed Road to where the scenario 2 point landed. So we'll just walk through the results, the mapped results of these 3 scenarios. So this is scenario 1. The bright green area is where we're able to reach the 4-minute travel time. So green is good in this case. You can see overlaid some of the future development and planning information, the kind of orangey yellow colors for future development that was included in the master plan, the blue lines for the Greenfield properties. So the table gives us the numbers as far as the results go, and they're very good. So what we're seeing here is 84% of the historic calls within the urban area are covered, and 80% of your urban area geography is covered under that 4-minute of travel time from those 3 station locations. And as far as the overall town goes, it gets a 79% historic call coverage and 52% of the entire geography of the town covered. Scenario 2 was the optimized model, and this ended up with very, very strong results. The only thing to caution here is that these results are modeled, and it doesn't necessarily mean that that dot on the map is the place where you could construct the fire station. But the results came out to show 98% coverage of urban area calls and 91% geographical area coverage in your urban area. That is excellent. Very, very high level of coverage. You can see the only places that cause any issue are just directly around the boundaries, and that there's virtually no way to get to 100% when you're working with a model like this. And so the overall, again, very strong, 89% of your historic total calls in the entire municipality covered, and 58% of the town's total geography covered in that 4-minute timeline. Scenario 3 that added a lens of realism to that scenario 2 option. Again, very, very strong results. And so in this case, we're looking at 93% of the urban area calls covered, 87% of the urban geography covered. So that means we are actually meeting that performance benchmark of 1710 that we were aiming for. So that was striving for 90% of calls covered within your urban area in 4 minutes of travel time. And in this scenario, we're actually at 93% coverage. The urban area of 87% covered means that if you were to have calls happen in those growth areas that currently today have no calls because there's nothing there, you would be expected to still be able to maintain a very strong future coverage as the development occurs. This table just provides a summary of all 3 scenarios compared to the baselines. So you can see that all 3 of the station location, the 3 station models improve from that existing condition, greatly improve from the existing conditions, and also show an improvement from the previous recommended 2-station model. Certainly, scenario 2 has the highest numbers, but is not likely to be fully implementable as such. So that results in station 3 being the one that has very, very strong performance and also the greatest hope of being able to implement. So in addition to the station location modeling, the study did provide some comment regarding the trends and best practices in a composite fire service as they apply to these 3-station models. The Fire Master Plan itself identified that LaSalle is a composite fire service as it has both full-time and paid-on-call volunteer firefighters, and that really has served the town very well to date. That was a strong, clear message in the master plan. However, the master plan also raised some of the challenges that the sustainability of using the paid-on-call volunteer firefighters to provide the primary and the initial suppression services is an increasing risk for the town, and certainly as it experiences growth. And so as a result, the master plan presented strategies that were specifically targeted at supporting the long-term sustainability of the composite department model. And really, the 3-station study is still in alignment and still in support of those same strategies through implementation. There's a strong interconnection between the staffing types, so full-time or volunteer, and your initial response time. As we know, time is a critical component with respect to the growth of a fire and also to the successful intervention of the firefighters. Certainly, there are pieces that belong to a home occupant or a homeowner, and that's related to early detection through working smoke alarms, having a home escape plan, and promptly notifying the fire department when there is an issue. Those are all important to the successful intervention. However, time is a key component. So really what we're aiming for here is having an assembly of 4 firefighters on the scene as your opportunity to safely initiate at least some level of fire suppression operations. And we consider a composite model to be optimal, where your initial response is provided by your in-station full-time resources that then would have a faster turnaround time and a faster response time. And your volunteer resources are then able to provide your depth of response. So provide the staffing on scene, to provide the total numbers necessary to meet the needs of the different types of calls, the different risks of the calls that they're responding to. In the industry, initial response is defined as the number of firefighters initially deployed to respond to an incident. So that is the first truck going there. That means that if there is a significant need or a significant event like a fire, they will call for additional resources and backup. There's also consensus across the industry that there really is a minimum number of firefighters necessary to be able to start any level of tactics like entry to a building, search and rescue, or any type of interior firefighting operations. And that number, as per the Fire Marshal's Office, guidelines from the province, National Fire Protection Agency, Ontario Health and Safety Standards, they all agree that the appropriate initial response, that first arriving on scene, should include a minimum of 4 firefighters. So that's really where the target comes from, and that's what we're striving for. Because if you don't have 4 on the scene, you have to wait until the additional firefighters arrive in order to commence those activities safely. So both two previous master plans have identified this need for future initial response provided by full-time firefighters. We've been moving towards that for some time now. And the most recent master plan identified a short-term priority to get to the point where we maintain 2 on-duty firefighters at all times at Station 1, and then transition as soon as possible to the point of having 4 firefighters on duty at all times. And this was in coordination with efforts to sustain your volunteer resources as well. So those 2 pieces work together. It's important to realize that it's not one or the other. We need that initial response by full-time firefighters, but we still have a very strong need for the volunteer resources to staff the additional fire suppression apparatus, so second and third responding trucks. But similar considerations of this kind of staffing model are going to be associated with the future stations as well. So future station 2 and a potential future station 3, we would look towards a similar type of model. So initially staffing with a minimum of 2 firefighters, working towards that target of 4 full-time firefighters as soon as fiscally possible in order to meet that initial response performance benchmark. Hiring of additional full-time firefighters provides a reduction in the dependency on paid on-call volunteer firefighters to be the initial response. That takes a little bit of a stress off of your volunteer model. And so it actually is one of the strategies in a growing community to support the sustainability of your volunteer firefighters. So again, these 2 pieces really work in unison together. As far as the paid on-call side goes, They are a key component of your fire services, if that hasn't been stressed yet. And the master plan included several recommendations on the volunteer model support. And this includes shifting away from the primary suppression being focused onto your volunteers. And you are experiencing challenges on the recruitment and retention of paid on-call volunteers. That is a common challenge across Ontario, across the industry right now. But it does seem that LaSalle has possibly a heightened challenge just based on the kind of characteristics of the community and of the people who live there, the types of work and so on. But the master plan did have a recommendation to actually increase the total complement of volunteer firefighters per station. And the idea here is having a larger pool to draw from to achieve your depth of response number. So if we're aiming for a target of 15 firefighters arriving on scene, if you're having challenges sustaining your volunteer model, we look to a bigger group. It provides less stress and pressure on each individual to make it to every call, and it makes a better numbers game as far as being able to draw the right group from the existing complement. The other thing that a larger group is important for is when we are looking at bigger events and extended emergencies, it provides a little bit more flexibility for the rotation of firefighters for rehabilitation and relief on those longer term calls. Key message here, sustaining your composite fire service model is the most cost-effective operating model for the town of LaSalle. The study had 4 main conclusions. So the first being scenario 2 provides a very high percentage of coverage of the initial arriving apparatus, both in the urban area and for the urban call coverage. However, those station locations are modeled optimized locations and may not be implementable if the property is not available at that exact location. Scenario 3 provides a high percentage of coverage with the potential to meet your benchmark of 90% of historic urban calls covered within your 4 minutes of travel time. And this is based on properties which are either owned by or anticipated to be available to the town. All 3 of the station models assessed do result in improved response coverage within that 4-minute travel time compared to the previous recommended 2-station model, and definitely from where you're at today with your existing conditions. There are, however, additional capital and operating costs associated with a 3-station model versus a 2-station, which will require further consideration. The 3-station model aligns with your long-term planning horizon that projects your full build-out of the town. So there is a level of future-proofing, if you will, of the 3-station model being that's what the town is going to need, that's what you work towards, and all the pieces have kind of been looked at from a much longer term lens. Finally, we highlighted some of the considerations for moving forward with the 3-station model implementation based on our suggestions. So the first would be to continue to annually review and update the town's community risk assessment based on the growth and development and intensification as it occurs. So there's a part of this that's a requirement based on the new risk assessment legislation put out by the province. But really the idea is that the risk assessment helps the town and the fire service be able to make appropriate decisions about delivering fire protection services to the community based on the local needs. So the risk assessment can be used as a tool to help along the way, planning when it may be necessary to move forward on the 2nd and 3rd station timing, things like that. Another consideration would be to conduct the cost-benefit comparative analysis of the 3-station model in comparison to the 2-station that had been considered previously. There is some further analysis regarding the staffing and how that would play out over time for the composite service that we've kind of walked through. So if we're looking at having full-time staffing in stations, what is the timing and cost associated there? And then implementing the changes to the paid on call complements. Again, what would be the timing and cost associated there? A piece of that is prioritizing and investing in those strategies to try and fully support the sustainability of the volunteer part of the composite model as well. And certainly that would require the preparation of an organization model for what that 3-station staffing would look like. There are some options there to enhance some of the roles and responsibilities of any additional staff moving forward. So some further consideration there that go beyond the scope of this study. And then the final piece is just that comprehensive paid on call recruitment and retention strategy that really is the first step in doing our best, putting our best foot forward to maintaining the volunteer complement within your composite fire department model. That brings us to the last slide.
Thank you. It was a comprehensive report. A lot of time went into that. Thank you. Before we go to council, Chief?
Yes, thanks. I know that you've received a lot of information and you have my report in front of you, so I won't go into the details of that. But I would like to make 3 comments. My first would be that both Dylan's and my report reference the challenges in maintaining our complement of volunteer firefighters. I want to be clear that I am extremely proud of our volunteer firefighters, and this challenge of retention is a challenge that is being experienced by most composite and volunteer fire services across North America. Our team is a very professional and committed team, and I'm thankful and proud of each and every one of them. Second, the reports before you describe a plan to hire more full-time firefighters. We as administration are aware of this financial impact of this. We will prepare a financial plan with this in mind, and we are not expecting to have 4 full-time firefighters at each location immediately. My last comment is that the charts within Dylan's presentation show in green the 4-minute response time from each fire station location and how it relates to the NFPA 1710 guideline. I just wanted to highlight that until the stations are built and operated with 4 full-time firefighters at each location, consistently meeting the 1710 guideline of 4 firefighters on scene in 4 minutes is not achievable. So these are my comments at this time, and am available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. We'll go to Mr. Carrick. Mr. Militia, any remarks before we go to council?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So again, just there's a lot of information there, and unfortunately, it just has to be that way. I wish we could succinctly put all that information into 4 slides, but it's just not possible. And because there is a lot of information, and quite frankly, it is a very sensitive and important topic that we're talking about. I will say, going through this process, certainly we started down the path of locating fire station number 2. And then as we started to talk about that, certainly in discussions with the chief, we started to talk about some of our other challenges that we've had and foresee having with respect to the number of volunteer firefighters. Again, speaking and agreeing with the chief, it's not about the quality of our volunteer firefighters because they're second to none. It's more about the numbers of our and keeping our volunteer firefighters, and realizing that with the demographics of our community, that's going to be a little harder as time goes on. And so we started to talk about, well, if we're moving more towards full-time fire, does that affect station location? At the same time, it seems like a bit of a perfect storm, quite frankly. At the same time, we start to talk about station location. We start to talk about, the balance between the volunteer and full-time complement. We start to take a look at some of, we're very fortunate. And if you look at our town center, we have a lot of development happening, 2 in particular, right? One by the town hall and one just probably a stone's throw away, where we have high density developments happening. And generally with these high density developments, we are going to need some rapid response to get to them in the event of an emergency. And so, we look at the development that's slated to happen. We look at our official plan and look at the town center, which encourages more high density development in our town center. and we start to look at a two-station model, which actually takes away from response times. Again, not significantly, but to some degree. So we start to take a look at that, we throw that log on the fire, no pun intended, that we start to take a look at, well, if we're encouraging high density development in the town center, in the Normandy area, maybe it makes some sense for us to keep station number 1 and look at a 3-station model. We're moving more towards probably a quicker move towards full-time than we had anticipated under the 2018-2019 fire master plan. And then we start to take a look at what properties do we own. We asked Dylan to come in and say, Nirvana, quite frankly, from an accountant's perspective, which somewhere deep inside there is still one. From an accountant's perspective, the easiest thing is to locate these stations on lands that we own. And so we asked Dylan to take a look at the 3 locations that we own, knowing that the Vollmer location would likely be very difficult. And it turned out that it was. Putting a station at the Vollmer would improve, but not if we're going to try to provide the best possible service. Let's try and locate these stations in the best possible locations that are implementable. And so Dylan did do their kind of best case scenario, which certainly puts the stations in some locations that may not be achievable. And then they looked at kind of the best alternative to us, which is keeping station number 1 on Normandy, constructing station number 2 in the west at the Centennial Arena site, and then in the future as growth happens, looking at station number 3 in the east at somewhere in the vicinity on Laurier, between what would be the pumping station that we know that we owned out there, as well as Disputed Road, just in that general area. I would also note that when Dylan plops these little points on the map, they're within effectively about a half a kilometer, give or take. So we have some area within that. Certainly there's area within station number 3 that's undeveloped at this time, that we could go aggressively and acquire some property in that area. And there are a few options available to us at this point. So, again, when you talk about locating stations, moving to a 3-station model, improving coverage and better serving, and certainly trying to address that balance or that rebalance from volunteer to full-time, still maintaining the volunteer force, obviously. That kind of leads to the recommendation that's before council in moving to that 3-station model. And obviously, this is obviously something new and required some discussion, as well as moving towards some public consultation, which we're hoping to do in February, assuming that council approves. So with that, Mr. Mayor, certainly the team's here available for any questions that council may have.
Okay, I've got Councillor Carrick, followed by Councillor Renault.
So, okay, thank you. Suzanne, Joe, and Ed, thank you for your presentations. We've all heard a lot of stuff and we've all dealt with a lot. And I'm glad that the chief and Dylan and the whole team could come together with a new plan, proposal anyways. So having said that, I don't think this is going to happen overnight. I think we all get that. So I'm not too worried about that, but I certainly support the recommendation. And I think moving forward, as we grow, it has to be this way. I don't think we can go back to any other formula or plan. So I would certainly look forward to moving this forward when the time comes. I think that as we continue to grow, and hopefully sooner than later, we can implement a lot of this stuff as we move forward, so that we can get those response times down. I feel safe about that. I'm not going to get into the nuts and bolts of part-time and coverage and all that stuff, because the report, like I said, speaks for itself. But having said that, I certainly look forward to it. I just have one question for Joe, our CAO. So on summary reports to council, would it be premature to say that we could remove item number 2? Thank you.
I mean, again, assuming that this council approves, we will address that. We will be addressing item number 2 on the council reports. And for those that are unaware, item number 2 is dealing with the Centennial Arena site.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Renault.
Thank you, Your Worship. as Councillor Carrick said, I'd like to thank the team for looking at this again. As we all know, there's been a lot of passion about the results of the last master plan, and you know what? We would have done what was best for the community, but knowing that things changed, even since that report, things have changed. Our official plan has changed. Our comprehensive bylaw, zoning bylaws changed. These things move the goalposts, and that two-station model might look good for today, but it won't look good down 15, 20 years down the road. I think your new data and your new set of eyes has really come up with the best scenario. And anyone who's following this will understand it's going to cost more money. We know that, and I have full trust in our financial team that they'll be able to turn around and come up with a sustainable plan to make this happen. For example, the last 3 years we've been building up our full-time complement slowly, and hopefully by the time we get that next station open, we'll be ready for it. And I do trust that our financial people will help put together a plan that will make this work at the smallest inconvenience to the taxpayers. So thank you very much, and a great report. And I will obviously support scenario 3. Scenario 2, although it is slightly statistically better, it puts one of those stations at an inconvenient spot right in the middle of our riverfront property development, which a lot of people are also very passionate about. So thank you again, and I will support.
Thank you, Councillor Reno. I have Councillor Akpata, then Councillor Edicio Spagnolo, and then Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, Your Worship. Received a number of phone calls, like I'm sure my colleagues have, and I'm just looking for a point of clarification on scenario 1. I just want to make sure that I understand what scenario 1 would do, because a number of members of the public have reached out to me to say, if you own it, why not put it there? And if you can you explain to us what the differentiation would be in the other scenarios? And I realize you've done it, but I'm looking for a succinct collapse of where the other stations may go under the other scenario. And I realize from the presentation that the teams did that we're not dropping, and if I quote, and keep me honest here, we're not placing the pins now, we're talking about the general area. So once again, Your Worship, it is folks who simply asked, if you own it, why not build it where you own it? And that's what the vast majority of the members of the public have reached out to me and asked me to get some points of clarification on this, sir.
Who wants to take that one? Ed, then Joe, or you guys battle? Who wants to answer?
I can start, Mr. Mayor, if that's easy.
Okay, go ahead, Suzanne.
Okay, so just to clarify, the only site that's different really between scenario 1 and scenario 3 is the Vollmer complex location. And so with that, we're just shifting to further down Laurier Parkway. And so there certainly are benefits. And when you kind of hold the two maps side by side, you're able to see the differences in the coverage of area. And it really shows that some of the new developments, certainly in the east side of the town, are left uncovered under the scenario 1. And scenario 3 really is able to reach much more of that planned future growth and development. So that's what our best assessment is at this point in time. It provides better geographical coverage and better coverage of where we know there will be future residential areas, future needs. The fact that it covers your existing call numbers at a higher degree shows that you're also going to continue to serve your existing residents better under that model. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. I do think there is an opportunity, as the moving part there is the third station. That gives us some time and maybe a little bit of time for clarification. So it's possible that that's something that we can see how the growth and development plans come through And that would then be the determining fact in where that best Station 3 location goes. And that aligns with that idea of continuing to update the fire risk assessment in coordination with the growth and development planning.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Akpata?
Yes, sir, it does. Can I ask a supplemental?
Yes.
So again, I understand what you've explained, and I get it. One of the other questions that's been brought to me is, for future planning, what is the obligation of the municipality to let future builders, not developers, but home buyers know that there may be a fire station in their area? And would that be something that we would do? Because again, if we're talking about potential growth areas, one resident said, I'd love to build a bigger house. I just want to understand how I may or would be notified that this may be something coming down the road.
Looks like Mr. Mara popped up. You want to take this one, Peter?
I can attempt to. I'm sorry, I just wanted to kind of fill in a little bit for that question. But certainly the area that Station 3 is identified is in the Howard Bouffard area. If council recalls, that area is zoned as deferred urban within the new zoning bylaw. As part of that reason for this deferred urban was so that the town can work on a secondary plan in that area. As part of that secondary planning process, there will be identification of municipal needs within that entire planning area, from parks to roadways to school sites to fire stations. So it's going to be a public process, a public document. And once that secondary plan is in place, certainly as we progress through some of that stuff, all future notices, and certainly should council wish, we could erect a large sign up on that property once we secure the piece of property and things of that nature. But that is kind of the premise of when we start to move forward on Laurier Parkway within that particular Station 3 location. As council is aware, Laurier Parkway, all the frontage on Laurier Parkway is currently, as part of the new official plan, is currently zoned as mixed use. So anything that's being built along Laurier Parkway will have to meet that mixed use form. So those will be low-rise apartments, 3-4-story apartments, multi-residential businesses, and things of that nature. So the idea of locating this on Laurier along that mixed-use corridor is putting it in essence a more of a commercial setting as opposed to a low density residential. Now there is existing low density residential out there, but certainly when we work through that process, how that gets buffered and how close does the new station get to some of the existing residential properties, those will be things that we have to work out and deal with in the future as we get into some of those secondary plans and things of that nature.
Joe, Ed, anything to add? Sounds good. Okay, Councillor Akpata, you satisfied, or another question?
Nope, Your Worship, those are the questions that have been given to me by the public, and I hope that they've been answered correctly. I understand the information that's been given, and I appreciate the answers.
Okay, thank you. We have Councillor Idicio Spagnolo.
Thank you. Through you. First, Councillor Akpata just asked one of my questions regarding the potential home builders, if they were going to be notified, if there were going to be a fire hall in that area. So thank you for answering that question, Mr. Morrow. The second is I just wanted to thank Suzanne and Chief Thiessen and administration for exploring new options. I'm satisfied with some of these options, and I think I would be happy to support scenario 3, but I am looking forward to getting some community consultation. Hopefully we can have that in the near future to discuss this and to get feedback from our residents. So thank you for your presentation.
Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, Mayor Bondi. I think everyone feels the same way. It was important for us to revisit where we were sitting with our master plan to see if any major changes had taken place. And obviously by the results presented to us tonight, a lot of changes have come our way. I have some concerns. I know we're looking to try to support this evening, the concept of it, but it's very difficult to move from a 2-station to a 3-station model and kind of throw all the support behind it without really knowing financially where this puts us, what time frame we're looking at. Like, what is the plan for the 2nd station? How long are we looking for that 3rd? I know this is a 20-year plan. And my other concern was our main station. We weren't looking at keeping that as our main station. So with that being said, what changes are we going to have to see at that location to be able to continue to use that as our main place? Is it sufficient? Are there updates that are going to be required for us to keep that? My other question was with our 2nd station plan before, we had looked at that possibly being a 2nd or maybe main EOC for the town of LaSalle. What would the plan be for that now? Where would that move to? I'll start there because I have a few more.
Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So again, what is before council is to receive these reports and authorize the preparation of the financial plan. So some of those questions that you're asking about, what does the financial plan look like? How are we going to phase this in? Certainly, as Chief Thiessen has indicated, this is going to take some time. I mean, the idea of quite frankly, we're not going to be in a position to build 2 additional stations and staff them to the extent that we want to in the short term. This is going to be a longer term plan that we're doing, albeit it'll be a bit of slow and steady, if I can describe it that way. So the whole idea is, again, from a public consultation, and I think Councilor Richo Spaniolo spoke to that as well, is that our plan was that subject to council's approval tonight, we would begin the consultation process or the public engagement process in February. We would probably have that open for about a month, for the month of February, and then close that off and bring those comments and information back to council probably late in March with a financial plan for the eventual approval. That's our kind of game plan in terms of from a timeline perspective. So again, at that point, council will have the ultimate decision at that point to go forward based on what we hear from the public consultation, as well as the financial plan at that, again, flowing through that timeline as we suggested. So that's basically the plan. In terms of your comments with respect to what would happen to the main station on Normandy, as well as the potential for an EOC, those items are still on the table. Again, we would co-locate an EOC, whether it be at station number 2 or station number 3. I would also suggest even that station number 3 may be the main station, and the headquarters, what we know as the headquarters today, may be more of a substation as opposed to the headquarters station. So all those gyrations of what goes where and what we have to do will certainly are all on the table at this point in time. And certainly, again, from a headquarters perspective, the space is the requirement and where we locate people. But certainly, we view each of the 3 stations interchangeably at this point, and looking at where is the best possible location to co-locate some of these infrastructure, some of the infrastructure that we need. So those are all on the table. It's just a matter of how fast we can get to them, and certainly through the implementation plan. So I don't know. Let me know if I've missed a question. Please let me know, and we'll try to answer those. I'll try to answer them.
Joe, I just wondered if you could give the viewing audience and council, when you say timeline, it'll be slow and steady, but if everything went perfect, it was approved, public consultation went great, and we go to station number 2, we're not doing anything before, what, 3 years possibly?
Well, I mean, ultimately, if we're moving in that direction, and again, I don't want to predispose council to any timeline, but we would likely start down a couple of processes after council approval. We would start to look at design work for the new substation, wherever it might be located, but we would look at design work for the new substation. We would look at enhancing our full-time complement so that once that substation is eventually completed and up and running, we'd have the staff to go into it. We would also look at, certainly Mr. Mara spoke about the secondary plan in the Howard Buford area and looking at where does that station number 3 look to be located, and look at how we go about acquiring property and quite frankly, erecting a sign that indicates a station coming soon. So that is where we're working on. We don't suspect that substantially for 2022, which would be this fiscal year. Again, assuming that council, we go through this approval process, we would probably undertake the design process and then start the implementation of the financial plan, beginning with the 2023 budget and moving forward with that. So I would suspect that probably in the next 30 months, 24 to 30 months, we would see assuming that council agrees and we go through that, we would start to see a station number 2, wherever that might be located, operational and staffed. Now, I will say though, again, moving to a full staffing model will take some time. So we might work through that. And I have to say, compliments to our fire association. They are aware of the planning process that we're going through and have been very cooperative and collaborative with us in terms of moving forward and working with us in terms of staffing and through that process. So, again, that would be more or less the timeline that we'd be thinking.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Milosh.
Okay, so some of these questions I'll save, I guess, for when we get to the next phase, because I think they're more detailed questions that we need answering more about the complement of volunteers and full-time. So I'll leave those. I do obviously love the idea of using town-owned land to build these stations. And we've spoke about the arena property for as long as I can remember on council, suggesting that that was a great location. So I am happy to see that that is being considered now. I know at the time we couldn't even consider it because half of the coverage was in the river, but with a third station that makes up for that loss. So it is exciting to see us be able to use a property we own. And that brings me to exactly what my other members of council have mentioned as well, which is wherever that location ends up being undisputed or Laurier or in that vicinity, I would really, really like to see us put up that sign sooner than later. I don't want us to run into the situation we've run into for the past 6 or 7 years, which is every time we go to propose a new location, we get members of the community saying, I had no idea this was going here. I built my dream home here. We don't want to run into that again. We want to make sure that the public is well aware of what's going on and what our plans are for the future. So I think that's a really big part of this next phase, is to be sure that once that location is selected, that the public's well aware, and that sign, I don't care if it's another 20 years before anything goes there, but people are well aware of what is going to be built there. And that brings me to my last thing, which is I realize this is supposed to come back, I believe March 22nd. I think I read, I may have wrote it down incorrectly. Is that enough time to get a complete financial and make sure that the residents have their say? I know it's hard with some people with Zoom being able to offer these type of open house, I guess you would say, over Zoom. And I don't want anyone from the public to feel like they didn't get their opportunity to come and speak on it, because that's, again, the last thing we want is people to feel like we didn't involve them in such an important decision for the future of our town.
Joe?
Yeah, so we certainly will have, again, the COVID environment has made us really good at dealing with virtual meetings. Again, we recognize that sometimes is difficult for some residents, but again, part of it working in this environment is we're learning to deal with it. I will say that we have had the opportunity, and I think this issue in particular has brought forth a lot of multiple channels that folks are voicing their opinions and getting that information to the town. So I think that is possible, and it is certainly those avenues are flowing much freer than they have in the past. I will say we do employ these place speak model, which has had great success with respect to outreach with respect to the Petite Côte project on the waterfront project. So we will be using that as well in terms of getting that messaging out and soliciting that input. With respect to the financial plan development, I mean, we had a basis of a financial plan based on the 2018 master plan. So we are now going through that process of refining that plan based on this change of direction. It gives us effectively 2 months from now to get that up and running and in front of council. From the financial plan perspective, I believe that's possible. Quite frankly, I'm not sure that we're going to know all the ins and outs of how many volunteer captains are we going to have, how many volunteer firefighters, when are those recruiting going to happen, what is going to be the process. Like some of those particulars, operational details won't be known until we start to implement that down the road 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. So if the expectation is that we're going to have this all-encompassing plan available on March 22nd, I could give you December 22nd, and we probably still wouldn't have the plan available on that at that point. We will have some broad-based assumptions in terms of what our hiring patterns will be, how our recruitment patterns will be, how volunteers and the full-time force, the rebalancing, as I spoke of, how that's going to occur, what the timeline would be for construction, design, and so forth. Those are some of the things that we'll cover off on the March 22nd report, assuming council approves. And so I believe that we will have enough time. Should we not, we will then go back to council and ask for a deferral. But we believe that we should have enough time. Internally we've discussed that, and we believe that that gives us ample time to get that report in front of council.
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. I saw Mr. Langlois pop in. Did he want to add something?
Sorry, I was just going to state that we've had some preliminary meetings, myself and the chief and the deputy chief, some good discussions. Actually, many of the questions that have been asked this evening by council, we're looking at addressing. A good example is, with the current headquarters, if there is eventually 4 full-time firefighters at that location, will there be some renovations required and whatnot? So we're starting to think and make sure that it's an all-encompassing plan, and we're not going to leave anything out. Another example is there additional equipment required, additional fire trucks required? So at a very high level, we're trying to think. It might not be the exact year that we purchase it, but it's going to give us a good idea and a good plan to work towards. And as Mr. Malicious stated, 5 years out may need a little bit of tweaking once we start rolling some of these initiatives out, but we're going to make sure that we do have a nice, responsible plan to move forward with, and it shouldn't be a problem having it ready for the second council meeting in March.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Langlois. Councillor Desjardins. So you're still muted?
Sorry, I don't have a lot of voice tonight, so I'm keeping my mouth shut. But my colleagues have asked the questions that I wanted to bring forward. But I want to say that this is a typical LaSalle thing where we're looking at it today, 5 years down the road, 10 years, 20 years down the road, so that we're not leaving our residents in any difficulty with fire, with safety. We're planning, we're looking at the whole package. We're looking at different options that we have. And I think we're moving in the right direction. Some of us have thought the fire hall should go on Front Road for a while. So I'm glad to see that that's kind of back on the plate. Changing out Normandy possibly to a secondary station and making the new third station, the main station. I think that is a good plan, and we need to look at doing that. So I think going forward, we're going to be in good shape, and we're taking care of the residents, and that's our mandate, is to take care of the residents, provide them safe facilities, offer them good fire services, offer them just good services. And I think that's where we're at with this tonight. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Councillor Desjardins. I just want to make sure, I believe we have Mr. Carrick putting forward the motion and Councillor Reno supporting the motion. I just want to make sure the recommendation. I just want to make sure there's 4 of them. So the first one is that the report of the Director of Fire Service Chief dated January 11th regarding fire master plan and implementation, fire station location strategy be received. Then we have the presentation by Dillon Consulting regarding the 3-station fire service model analysis be received. And further, that council authorize administration to append the 3-station fire service model analysis report from Dillon to the Fire Protection Service Master Plan 2019. It's 2. That the strategy of scenario 3 as presented in the 3-station fire service model analysis report from Dillon Consulting be approved. And that council authorizing to administration to prepare a financial plan for scenario number 3. So I just want to stop there for a moment, because if this comes back at $60 million, council won't approve it, hypothetically. So there's still an out, but we have to move forward before we get the financial plan. And further, that council authorize administration to plan and prepare a virtual public information platform to present the 3-station analysis to the community. But before we vote, it's been discussed, it does matter where we put it. Centennial Arena, all the people who didn't want it at the other location we were looking at said the old arena site. None of the neighbors that live there said that. So you know you're going to get backlash wherever we go. But if this is the final report, and it seems like it is, there's a lot of study, background. Suzanne did a great report, all the scenarios, the potential, where we're going, and number of calls, the lack of retention and recruiting new paid on call. We need more full-time. It's all culminating into something we have to do. Councillor Desjardins, you said it's for the safety of the residents. That's our number 1 mandate. Whether it's fire, police, we're third safest community in Canada. Well, we want to be the safest for fire and police, not just police. So with that, Mr. Carrot, you are making the motion of the recommendation to receive all 4, and Councillor Reno, you're supporting?
Yes, I am.
Okay, all in the motion, discussion. Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you. Just on the last point of what we're moving today, is there a way we can do something that is not virtual, set up in the town hall for maybe the handful of residents who can't sign online? I know we are not encouraging people, maybe they could make an appointment to see storyboards or something. I know I've heard from residents who feel that, everything's virtual and some of them don't have the capabilities of going online and doing that. Is there something that we can offer those residents?
I'm trying to think of the restrictions under COVID as they sit right now. We may be able to, again, we can look at that and try to provide a by appointment situation where folks can come in and look at the information. We can make this report available, for example, to the ratepayers should they not be able to get a printed copy elsewhere. I would also say that it doesn't preclude residents from calling us and trying to get information as well. In terms of coming in, we can make these reports available to residents. We can have, again, if they're looking for specific information, certainly they're more than welcome to call into the chief or myself, and we can make an appointment to really discuss that their particular issues and put that as part of the public record if need be. Certainly, we would encourage those kind of things. If you're looking for, what we would term as our traditional public information sessions that we have, those are probably not possible under COVID at this time. Perhaps in 6 months or whenever, if someone's got a COVID crystal ball, I think I threw mine out, 3, 4, 5 years ago. But what feels like 3, 4, 5 years ago. But certainly we can, we're available by appointment. Certainly it's always the case. We would encourage it if you're getting calls. We would encourage those individuals, give them our numbers, give them their names, or give us their names, and we'll certainly return their calls. We will try to make like an appointment schedule, so to speak, where folks will be able to come in under an appointment basis. Part of it is we have an operation run. Believe it or not, there are other things we do than try to site fire stations. And so, although sometimes it feels like that's all we do, that's just a little joke there. I can still be funny at this hour. But certainly, again, from that perspective, we can try to isolate a day or two where we have, a couple of hours where folks can come in and make an appointment. We typically, in situations like that, typically most times they just want to talk to us, so we can either do that through appointment or by the telephone. People aren't looking to make an appointment to come in unless it's in a group type setting, which unfortunately we can't do under the current pandemic conditions. So we will try, but again, what a typical public information session would be like, that we will not be able to do.
Okay, so as the mover, I'm okay with what Joe's added, if that's okay with the majority.
Jeff, you okay? He's thumbs up. Okay. On the motion, all in favor? That carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Suzanne. Great presentation. Appreciate it. A lot of information, but you made it easy to digest. Thanks. Chief, you're still up. Extension of Get Ready Online agreement.
Yes, thank you. Through you. The only comment I will make here is that we are happy with our services that we're getting from Get Ready, and the funds for this is included in our current budget, and I have no further comments.
Council's pleasure. Deputy Mayor Malash.
Sorry, I will move the motion, but I also have a quick question. I did notice in there, it says that we could do a possible 2-year extension, but we're only looking at doing a 1 year. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, so this is before you today as a result of a little bit of an error on Get Ready's part when we first signed our contract. So it was supposed to be a 3-year contract with a possibility of extending it for 2 years, but we're into it already, and now we have an opportunity to extend it for 1 year. So it was a little bit of a language error initially, and we're just trying to rectify that.
Thank you.
Okay, moved by Deputy Mayor Malash, support Councillor Akpata. All in favor? Thank you. That carries. Extension of radio communication agreement. Chief Thiessen, you're up again.
Yes, thanks. So this is, again, just a little bit of housekeeping. It is just the extension of a service that we're happy with. And again, the funds for this are part of the current approved budget.
Okay, thanks, Chief. Moved by Councillor Didicio Spagnolo. Support Councillor Reno. All in favor? That carries. Thanks, Chief. I think you're done. Okay, we have County of Essex correspondence dated January 6, 2022 regarding consideration of support for Windsor Essex workers. Councillor Desjardins. Motion move, okay. Support. Deputy Mayor Malash, all in favor? That carries. Thank you. Now, is that, just so I'm clear, Councillor Desjardins, that's motion to receive or motion to receive and support? Receive? Okay, thank you. County of Essex correspondence dated January 7, 2022 regarding small business support in Essex, Windsor. Councillor Desjardins, motion to receive. Support, Councillor Reno. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Summary of reports to council. I think we have to deal with number 2. Motion received, Councillor Carrick. Support, Councillor Reno. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Okay, before we go to bylaws, can I call on Ms. Beggs to talk about 8664, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I just wanted to bring a note of clarification. Late in the day, towards the end of the day, we noticed a typographical error associated with Schedule 1 of the H removal bylaw. So Schedule A currently says residential 4 holding zone R4-4H to a residential 1 zone R4-4. And so it should read to a residential 4 zone R4-4. So it corresponds with the actual zone. So we just wanted to make that note as a matter of public record so that you are aware.
Thank you. We'll note that this is Ms. Begg's first council meeting as an employee, not as Dillon consultant, right? Okay, so what we'll do, if I get this right, we will have all 3 readings on all 3 bylaws with a clerk's note on bylaw 8664 as what Ms. Beggs just described.
Yeah.
Is council okay with that? Okay, all 3 readings. Councillor Carrick and Councillor Dedicio Spagnolo, all in favor? That carries. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Beggs. Council questions. Deputy Mayor Melange, then Councillor Akpada.
Thank you, Mayor Bondi. I was wondering if we could have administration prepare a report about the Adopt a Street program that's in Ontario. I did contact Mr. Mara about this, just kind of as a heads up, and he had recommended that I maybe put it in form of a question for a report to come back, and that report would be about the ongoing administration of the program and how we could implement something like an Adopt a Street program in the town of LaSalle.
You okay with that, Joe? Okay. Okay, that's it, Deputy Mayor Melange. All right, Councillor Akpada.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is, I'm just seeking some direction. Following our green presentation about eventual food recycling, I was watching CBC News and I want the town of LaSalle to be a leader. And I saw a number of municipalities had engaged with a Canadian company to see about supplying recycling food units in their municipality. I contacted them and of course was very cautious not to promise anything at all, except to suggest that perhaps they could contact with some of our administration for the discussion that other municipalities have had. Your Worship, I'm looking for direction as to who I can get this Canadian company that's working with a number of municipalities across the province of Ontario to recycle food into biodegradable small components that's easily handled and easily managed, to have a discussion with our staff to see if what a number of other Ontario municipalities are doing fits with the town of LaSalle, with no commitment on behalf of the municipality whatsoever.
I think Joe's we're doing something with Essex Solid Waste Authority right now, but Joe, do you want to?
Yeah, so there's a regulation out that requires municipalities to start to go down the path of biosolids and organics collections. And so we, as part of a member municipality of the Essex Windsor Solid Waste Authority, are participating in that. So again, there was a presentation to council, I want to say in early December, from the Solid Waste Authority. We've had some subsequent meetings with them and are scheduled to have a few more in terms of actions. The board is actually, the Essex Windsor Solid Waste Authority board has actually passed a resolution that they would like the municipality to endorse. We expect that to come forward in late February. I will say that in terms of a point of contact, Councillor Akpada, you can certainly provide my name, but I will just forward them on to the county. So if you want to provide Michelle Bishop's contact information, I can correspond with you directly and get you that information. She would be the one, she's the general manager of the Essex Windsor Solid Waste Authority, and they would be the one that they should start to begin discussions with. Now, if it's on that scale, I'm not sure if this is, that would probably be the best place to start. And then from there, Michelle will be able to forward them to the appropriate bodies.
Thank you, sir. What I'll do then after the meeting is I'll shoot you an email and we'll connect offline. That's it, Your Worship. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, you're muted.
Sorry, I'm trying to mute myself so you don't hear paper shuffling. We, as one of the 4 municipalities in Essex County, must adopt this program by 2025. But the LaSalle only has to have a drop-off location, not pickup. Other municipalities have to have curbside pickup. So we have to do something, and we're working on a plan. And as Mr. Militia said, we may be doing a county plan. So Michelle Bishop is the right person to ask, but I don't know if she can answer directly what they can do in the town of LaSalle until we decide what we're doing within the county. Any other council questions? Seeing none, statements by council members. Councilor Dicho Spagnolo.
Thank you. Through you, I'm going to put my other hat on, and I'm just going to remind everybody that tomorrow is Bell Let's Talk Day. I know we all make our calls, our texts, and tweets, so I'm just encouraging everybody to send out as many tomorrow to friends, family. We do, not CMHA, but mental health in general receives 5 cents per text, and we all know that mental health has heightened in over the last few years, especially. So just support, wear blue, and share on your social media platforms about Bell Let's Talk Day tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a good cause, and we'll see if we can get that done and get you some more money. Reports from committees. Notices of motion. Confirmatory bylaw, first reading. Councilor Dicho Spagnolo and Deputy Mayor Malash, all in favor? That carries. Second reading. Councilor Desjardins and Councilor Reno, all in favor? That carries. Thank you. And third and final reading, Councilor Carrick and Councilor Akpata, all in favor. That carries. Okay, we have our scheduled meetings. We'll see you February 8th, if not before. Good night. Thank you, viewing audience, for those who have joined us, and